Allan Aguirre with your Incorruptible 2-minute warning. And we're talking about time. And I've been having to juggle time for the last month or so. And time has brought us to this. It's Friday. You got dings because people are texting me. They're like, Allan, we love you. Allan, don't be stressed out about the book. We love you and Monday Night Rocks. I'm just kidding. I'm just making all that up. Time. We're talking about time, and time. It's been crazy. It's 2-minute warning. It's Friday, which means we're in Friday mode, and there's no music. There's no timer. We're going to talk a little bit about time because I only have a little bit of time. We started doing Incorruptible 2-minute warning in November, and when spring, summer kicks in, that's when other stuff starts happening, like travel, speaking engagements. And I have a relationship with one of the resorts here in town, and it's important for me to keep that relationship healthy, and it's a good one. And that means I sometimes have to do some work for them, and so I do. And again, it's more relational than anything. So that kicked in this week, and it'll be kicking in Friday next week. I think it's we'll be fine next Friday. So, I have to roll with it. You have to roll with it. Let's all just roll with it together. My main concern regarding time is the Exodus to Ingathering Field Manual 2, and I probably won't be sleeping between now and next weekend because I need to write as much as I possibly can. So I need for you to pray for me for content download. Oh, let me get some chat action going. For the content to be downloaded, and Revelation. I know what I'm going to write about, but still, you still need the content. So yes, it's important. And because I got to get that book out. Okay. All right. Do I hear a golf clap? Thank you. So hey, it's Incorruptible 2-minute warning. We're talking about time, man. Time. I don't know, man. I don't think people understand how important time is to the scheme of things. The late great David Flynn wrote that because God is outside of our time-space continuum, because he's outside of time, he's voluntarily has chosen to anchor himself to our time through the Ark of the Covenant. And that makes sense to me. So let me explain. When our reality was created, it was created with instruments it was the first thing that was created when it came to our existence, to our reality, were instruments, timekeeping instruments. I haven't rehearsed this. This is all, off the cuff. Timekeeping instruments. What do I mean by that? Well, look at the account of creation in Genesis. Moon, sun, and it was the first day. That's what it says. And then he creates the stars and the signs and seasons, right? So that the stuff Christianity has taught us not to look at the sky because they're afraid of astrology. But that's exactly where we're supposed to be looking, because that's where we find out the signs of the times and the seasons. For example, his feast days, the new moon, the Sabbath, right? So on the seventh day, he rested and he made it holy. The Sabbath represents three things. And when we observe the Sabbath, it tells us that when we observe the Sabbath, we are aligning ourselves with God in saying that he made the earth in 6 days and rested on the seventh. He delivered us from Egyptian slavery, and by keeping the Sabbath, he makes us holy. That's what the Bible says. I don't have the references, exact passages, but it's explained in this book. I'm not trying to sell a book. I'm just telling you that it's already in here. So, planetbluemedia.com. And so time, our whole reality is based is encased. I'll use the word encased in time, in a 24-hour period. And we're supposed to serve him daily, pick up our cross daily. Everything is based on that daily 24-hour period. Yesterday is gone. Tomorrow doesn't exist. All we have is right now. All we have is this 24-hour period. And the majority of us, right, normal people, or the majority of us, sleep for 8 hours. So you only have 16 hours to either blow it, pervert yourself, or to obey and walk in holiness. That's it. This whole thing is predicated on how you do the next 16 hours. That's it. And we fell miserably at it. How is that possible? So, we are encapsulated in a time framework. God is outside of our time. He's outside of time. What else? What else would be outside of time? Angels, archangels, seraphim, cherubim, the sons of God, the demonic. Well, no, you know what? They're not. Time doesn't impact them, because remember what they told Jesus? It's not our time yet. They're on a ticking time bomb, right? You know what I mean by that, right? There's always a timer on a bomb, and it's counting down to 0, and then the demons know that. It says that they told Jesus, it's not our time yet. You can't do anything to us because it's not time yet. It's not our time yet. And Jesus said, yeah, I know. You're right. So what did he do? He didn't send him to, it's called the waterless places. It talks about it in Enoch. It's mentioned in the Old Testament. The scapegoat is sent out into the waterless places. That scapegoat, Azazel, look up that name. That's part of the whole Enoch Watcher thing. That scapegoat is sent out to the nether regions, outer regions, outside the camp, waterless places. That's where demons are apparently sent. And they didn't want to get sent there because that's not good. But it wasn't their time to be sent there. And so Jesus cast them into the swine. And then the swine ran down the hill, 200 of them, I think, into the water and drowned. What were these people in the Golan Heights and basically Israel doing with pigs to begin with? Yeah. Time. So the fact that David Flynn says that, and I have no problem with him saying that, actually. I have no problem with that concept. God has voluntarily anchored himself to our timeline through the Ark of the Covenant. I love that. Because he's outside of our timeline, right? I mean, he has no beginning or end. He's forever. And so what else is outside of that? We got the 24 elders in the throne room, the 4 living creatures. There are things that exist outside of our time. Christianity doesn't really talk about that stuff because it's too sci-fi. It's too supernatural. It's too, wacky. That's why Enoch's not in your canon. Well, it was in God's canon, but not in your canon. The New Testament writers read, studied, believed as scripture Enoch. So there you go. So anyway, time. So there's a piece, there's a little thing about time that I usually talk to people about. When I talk to people about this stuff, I always bring up timelines, because timelines are everything. we have timelines are everything in the Bible. Timelines coincide with genealogies. Timelines coincide with prophets and prophetic words. Everything, right? God says that He doesn't do anything on the earth without first telling it to His servants, the prophets. But right, the sons of Issachar were aware of these things. It was pretty much a part of their job as a tribe to have this information. Anyway, so Israel would know. Prophetic timelines are really important because it's like when this happened, or this is going to happen, and then this is going to happen. I mean, this is the way stuff works. Timelines are incredibly important. And I'm going to talk a little bit about timelines because I don't have a lot of time to spend with you this morning. I apologize. I am still busy. I'm hoping things can, well, anyway. There's, like, for example, in my personal life, timelines, there was I've always been convinced that our life trajectory, the trajectory of our lives are based on maybe 2, 3, 4, 5, maybe decisions that we make. I had 2 major decisions before I was 16 that if I had made those, if I had chosen to do those 2 things, one of them was to stay in Manhattan in 1979 and not go back to LA with a girl, to stay with a particular girl. Well, she was a woman. In 79, if I had chosen to do that, then the next decision I needed to make would never have been made because I wouldn't have been in a position to make that decision. And that decision was to jump on a plane to go to Guatemala, which absolutely changed the absolute complete trajectory of my life. So if I had stayed in New York, I wouldn't have gone to Guatemala. If I hadn't gone to Guatemala, it would have been no bueno in Los Angeles because of what I was involved with musically and the level I was involved with. So it's very important. Timelines, decisions we make. And then the decision to come back to the States, to LA, to stay in LA, the decision to come back to the States and stay in LA instead of I was supposed to go to community, like a commune in Colorado somewhere. I'm not even sure where or what it was because I didn't go. And instead I started Scattered Few. I don't think I was supposed to do that. I started a band. And that kind of altered my trajectory. God, through mercy and grace, will work with your mistakes or your bad decisions as well as the good ones. I mean, you know what I'm saying? That's not what I'm not really, wasn't going to really go there. That's a whole different thing. Perfect, acceptable, and permissible will of God, right? Those type of things. And then there's people out there that say, what are they, Calvinists or something? I don't even bother with that nonsense. But anyway, and if you're a Calvinist, sorry, I'm a Christian. So I do the Jesus thing, not the Calvin thing. How's that? I think our life trajectory is based on certain, like a handful, 3, 4, 5 major decisions. And they're either good or bad, and a lot of people make bad ones. A lot of people make bad ones after they come to Jesus, and that's because they're not walking in the Spirit, they're walking in the flesh, and they're not walking in God's will. You have to do God's will. God's will determine where you are, who you are, with whom you are, and when you are. You know what I'm saying? All that. That timeline is incredibly important. But the aspect about timelines I wanted to bring up about is something that I deal with quite often with people. I deal with a lot of people and their discipleshiping. I deal with a lot of people. They come to me or whatever, or they just happen to, or it just happens where they are in need of counsel or understanding. It's pastoral type stuff, right? Where people need help or come to me for help or advice or counsel, stuff like that. Yeah, sorry. Yeah, I know. The scattered few thing was huge. Somebody said if you had not done scattered few, then I would not have met you either. I know it's huge. A lot of starting scattered few was huge, and it was huge. I mean, it impacted an entire musical industry. You know, and I'm not saying that to do that. No, that's just truth. So, um, what was I saying? I forgot what I was saying. Timelines. Oh, so I do a lot of working with a lot of people, and one of the things I do is I start asking questions because part of sometimes I'll have the immediate discernment of what's going on with that human being or that spirit in that human being, whether it's godly or demonic, right? Discernment has you gotta have discernment. Everybody knows that I believe that's a very important thing. Anyway, but even if I have like the full download, spiritual download on the individual, that's not key. What's key is that individual understanding the stuff that they're asking about. Because see, it doesn't help. I'm about teaching you how to fish, not just giving you a fish and feeding you and going on my way. No, that serves no purpose for any of us. I mean, if that's what I'm supposed to do, of course I'll do it. But the majority of people need to be you need to be taught how to fish. It's called discipleship. You need to be taught how to fish. You need to understand. You need to be equipped. Right there we go. Fivefold ministry, equipping the saints, so that you can navigate your own life. Because that's your job, not mine. You need to seek out your salvation with fear and trembling, not me for you. So I'm about equipping people. So part of that equipping usually usually involves a question and answer time. I'm going to ask questions about you because I'm getting to know you. If you want me to speak into your life, remember that verse that says lay hands on no man suddenly. Yeah, I don't lay hands on people suddenly. I don't do that. That's not no. And so part of that process is, regardless of how much spiritual discernment I have, I'm going to go through a Q&A with you because you need to understand, not me. You need to understand about yourself more than I need to understand about you. See what I'm saying? Okay. So, and a lot of those questions are like, so where are you from? What do you do? What kind of work do you do? And depending on where they're at in life, how old they are, stuff like that will determine the questions, obviously, and whether they're male or female, single or married or divorced or whatever, right? Obviously. So, but a lot of the questioning is going to involve with who are you, where are you from, what did your parents do, what did your dad do, do you have believers in your line, family line, were your parents believers, were your grandparents believers? That's all important. Generational ties, blessing, cursing, generations, right? I mean, that's just generational spirits. That's just all a part of it. And that all involves time. See, grandfather, dad, you, great grandfather, there's time right there. Okay. So, but here's the really interesting thing that I run into a lot, probably more than definitely more than I want to, but it's very interesting what ends up happening with a lot of people, in my experience, when it comes to people's own timeline. And that's all the gaps, all the misplacement of events. In other words, it's very interesting how often people can't tell you their timeline in a chronologically, and things overlap, or they get because right, there's one because here's what I'll do. There's a line of questioning, and they give me their answers. Boom, 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 boom. And we'll talk, and then I'll go back and I'll address something here. Sorry, and I'll address something here, and then their answers start conflicting with their original answers. And we'll talk, and then we'll talk, and then I'll go back and address some stuff over here that got all gray area. They got all confusing and muddled, and it just gets right. And the more you question, the more their timeline changes, or they deviate from their own timeline, or they're and okay. A lot of people will say, and see, a lot of those people would probably. I believe that happens because they're lying. Well, no, I know for a fact that they're lying. Otherwise, why would your timeline be so confusing? Because, see, they're covering stuff up. See, a lot of people, and a lot of those people that I'm referring to, that I'm about to refer to, probably would do the same thing because they're not telling the truth. Would say, Allan, that's not fair. Maybe they just forgot. Okay, that's fair. Maybe they just, yeah, that's possible. But again, this is a spiritual exercise, and there's not a lot of truth being told a lot of times. A lot of times there's deceit, dishonesty, lack of integrity. They're covering things up, or they're exaggerating. Do you understand what I'm saying? I'm not discerning that it's as simple or as simple or as innocent as they just got confused or don't remember stuff. No, that's not what's going on. When it is, no problem. Because people do that. No, see what I'm talking about, because it is a spiritual exercise, here's what's going on. The spirits in you, the spirits in these individuals, remember, they're coming to me. The demonic or whatever's out of alignment, whatever is not of God, unclean, generational, whatever, knows me and knows what I'm. See, I shouldn't have said that, because that freaks people out. That freaks people out. Sorry. Knows what I'm doing and what I'm getting at. See, I'm getting down to core. You're coming to me because you want counsel and advice and blah, 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 blah. There's reasons why your life is out of order and why you're coming to me to get your life in order, or to hopefully get advice or questions answered about why your life, whatever the situation is. Well, those spirits know that I'm cutting to the quick, getting rid of all the nonsense. I like that. I just edited myself. I said nonsense instead of two letters. The letters B and S. I'm going to cut through all the crap. I'm getting down to the core, because, see, unless we're dealing with the core, there's no resolve, because that's who God's dealing with. God's dealing with the core, not who you think you are, not who you think he thinks you are, not who you think I think you are. No, but who you are. Remember that lyric from Scattered Few? Speaking of Scattered Few, something about, don't you realize that when you're sitting by yourself, it's the you need to sacrifice and not somebody's else? Because who you are by yourself at 2 or 3 in the morning, who's looking back at you in the mirror, that's who God died for. That's who God wants to coven with. That's who God wants to have relationship with, not the one that you created that's all full of BS and crap and hiding and layers, that onion layer of life, those defenses that you put up so that you can keep people from coming in and actually dealing with the real you, right? I don't have time for that. If you're going to come to me for advice and want to talk to me about real life stuff, and you come to me with BS, no. Next, I don't have time for that. I don't play games. And that's insulting. Why would you insult me like that? I'm not screwing with you. Don't screw with me. So when people start confusing their timeline, when people start changing their timeline, when people start whatever with their timeline, it's usually because it's a lying spirit. It's a spirit of deceit. There's a lack of integrity there. And it's based on their not being honest with themselves or those around them. And see, here's the craziest thing that I don't understand. Don't you understand, or don't you realize that the games you're playing with yourself and with other people, you're also playing with God, and God's like going, no, I'm not listening. I'm not interested. Proverbs says that if you're not keeping his commandments, your prayers are not being heard by him. They're bouncing off the ceiling. They're not even getting past your ceiling. They're bouncing off the ceiling. Why do we believe, I say we because I'm not trying to be a jerk, but why do you believe that the games you're playing with yourself and with other people and with God aren't going to come back and bite you? Why do people believe that they're going to be able to con God, or that they're conning God? Why do people believe that they're getting away with what they're doing? That's like the weirdest thing. Here's an example. I said that I deal with this a lot when I deal with people. It's true. In fact, I dealt with this 72 hours ago. I'm going to be very delicate because I'm not going to name any names or blah, 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 blah. I haven't processed. Well, I haven't thought this through on how to share this as an example, because it's a great example. And I'm trying to be nice. This is me trying to be nice. This is me trying to be pastoral. Yeah. I'm out of coffee. I've got like one bad swig of coffee here. When you live in community, some people actually think, see, there's a reason why people live in community. They live in community because they can't make it out on their own. Oh, God. A lot of people. The majority of people live in community because they can't make it on their own. Man, that was hard, man. It took me years to figure that out, because I was in community for 3 years, and I was in less than 10 months. Those 3 years, they might as well never have happened. So I don't speak from an elitist position on anything. That's just BS. Come on. No, I've been through all this myself. See, I've already been through all this crap myself. I know how you're thinking and why you're thinking like that, but I also know what you're going to have to do to get from there to here. And that's where we lose the majority of people, 80+% of you. So after 3 years of intense, 24/7 intense discipleship, and apparently it's more intense than 90% of you people, because you've never experienced the stuff that anyway, again, that I know that makes me sound like, no, that's not what I'm doing. Clear your mind, pay very close attention to what I'm saying, and don't let them steal this from you. Right? Remember, the birds steal the seed. See, Jesus knows about this, because he explains what happens when you hear the word of God or the words from people of God. The enemy tries to steal it and take it away so it doesn't bear fruit and help you. So I know that a lot of things that I say, the enemy just comes in and swoops and takes them away from you. Okay, don't let him do that. After 3 years of intense 24/7 discipleship, it took me less than 10 months for me to just literally throw that away as if it never happened. And I talk about that in this book to an extent. In this book. And it would be, right, the ripple effect. Years later, I would finally snap out of that stuff. I had to learn how to live like I did in community, in intense discipleship, which was amazing and the greatest thing that ever happened to me. I had to figure out how to do that by myself, alone, without the protection of commune, right? I had to figure out how to do that by myself. I had to live for God in the world under my own recognizance. Man, that was brutal. That was rough. Why? Why is it brutal? Why is it rough? Because it required me to literally submit and grow up and quit screwing around and quit making excuses for why I didn't obey and for why I chose sin instead of obedience, just like everybody else. So, one of the main reasons why people live in community is because they can't live on their own. And that is manifested in so many ways. So I find it very interesting when people that live in community, I find it interesting when people, for some reason, come to a place or a point where they think or they decide it's time for me to go. Because I'm going to use my life as an example because, well, it's my life. So we live in community a lot. We've been living in community or people live with us in community and have for a long time, just a very long time. This is what we do. But anyway, and when they live in community with us, we basically function as their pastors, right? Right. And these people come, we don't just let anybody. It's not like Japusa, Jesus People USA in Chicago is a 10-story hotel. It's a commune. I'll use the word commercial commune. What I mean by that, it's like an open to the public commune. We don't do that. We don't have a facility like that. We don't. So it's way low key. It's way smaller. And so we know these people. They're not just off the street. And so we know what's going on with their lives because we go through all this rigmarole that I explained at the top of this conversation, right? Anyway, so we know what's going on with their lives. We know why they're asking for help. We know why they need our help and why we're helping them. So doesn't that mean also, this is rhetorical, obviously, but wouldn't that also mean that when it's time for you to go that, because see, you got to remember, they believe or feel that it's time for them to go when they go because God told them to, because they've all of a sudden, out of nowhere, what they couldn't do before, they can all of a sudden do, which means we're like that my wife and I are that amazing. We're that good. We can take you from being an absolute wretch to amazing and sometimes in just a matter of weeks. That's how good we are. Do you understand what I'm saying? So these absolutely dysfunctional, broken people come to us because they want to be fixed. They want help. Well, we're here to help you. But then they become smarter than you. See? Why? Well, because people don't like being reminded that they forgot to take out the trash, or that they forgot to clean up after themselves, or that they forgot to turn the light off in the room when they left, or that when was the last time you washed your clothes or your bedding? See, people don't like that. And see, that's why they're over here, because they don't function very good on their own, right? They're quite dysfunctional and broken, which is why they're asking us for help, and we're trying to help them. They're thinking, oh man, they think they should be able to run churches. Oh, I've got this. God's given me this. God's called me to global ministry, and we're like, you should probably wipe all that crap off your face first. You should probably learn how to wash dishes, put chairs away. How dirty is your bathroom? See what I'm saying? Yeah. And so when they're being berated daily or weekly based on how dysfunctional the human is, right? They don't like that. Humans don't like that. And you get what you get. You get what you give or you put into it. Well, you remember that you're here because you can't function outside of here. You're doing a piss poor job of doing this thing called life on your own, and you've asked for help. Well, part of that, right? Discipleship is being discipled. Is being taught, right? Being faithful with the small, exactly, Bo. Right. So we're teaching you here. See, there's a reason why you're having a hard time keeping a job, or there's a reason why you can't keep an apartment or buy a house. There's a reason for this up here. But see, we can't go from here to there. See, we've got to go through all the things that are broken that manifest this. It's just common sense. It's in the Bible. It's the New Testament. Read the New Testament. Read the Gospels. This is what Jesus did with the disciples, and then taught them how to do it with us. And here we are. That's all we're talking about. and you only have a 16-hour, and we're only talking 16 hours. So they get upset with you because you're constantly reminding them about stuff they're constantly failing at. And they don't understand spiritual matters, because if they were taking care of their business, remember what Jesus told the Pharisee Nicodemus? How do you not understand what I'm talking about? You're not understanding physical things. How are you going to understand the spiritual things I have to download to you? He told that to the disciples, and he told that to the leaders. You're not capable of functioning in the physical realm very good. Functioning in the physical realm is a huge, massive challenge for you. Why do you believe you're supposed that you're like this? What why do you believe you're functioning in the spiritual realm when you're not capable of functioning in the physical realm? That's the cart before the horse. See, and that's that's almost 80 to 90% of people. It's just insane the amount of people that are trying to do something in the spirit when they haven't figured out stuff in the physical realm. And it's obvious. I mean, it's obvious. Remember the other New Testament verse that says, how can you possibly manage God's house when you're having a hard time or you're not even managing your own house? Remember that? If you can't manage a wife and 3 kids, hell, if you can't manage a wife and 1 child, why do you believe you'll be able to manage a church of 50 people or 150 people or 1,500 people? See what I'm saying? Jesus said that. The New Testament, Paul, I think, said that, not me. It's the same thing. That's what we're talking about. So, back to time. I love it when these people decide, because they're kind of, they're upset, they're pissed off, they're angry, they've taken up an offense, and they want to bail, but they have to. So there's 2 ways they do it. One, they turn on you and make you the bad guy, and they create this big, huge fakes thing in their mind where you're bad, and so they have to leave for their own protection. Or my favorite is God told them it was time to leave, and then we get to sit them down and we get to ask them the real basic question: don't you think? So you weren't able to do any of this stuff 6 months ago, but now all of a sudden, God's talking to you, but He didn't tell us. Don't you think God would tell us that it's time for you to leave? Because He does. We usually know people. We usually know it's time for people to leave before they do. And those are my favorite, because here's why I say my favorite, because it's like watching television. It's like watching a really bad B movie. Because then these people's timelines come into play. This is what you were doing 12 months ago, 15 months ago. Hell, this is what you were doing 6 months ago. And now, of course, they'll never attest that it's because my wife and I are the most amazing human beings on planet Earth, and we have the skill sets to transfer this information to you like that. And you went from zero to nothing, from zero to holy in 6 months. That's because my wife and I are really great at what we do. I mean, right? I mean, jeez. No, it's because you didn't hear from God and you're rebellious and the truth isn't in you, and you want to bail. And so it's not like we're a cult. It's not like you're chained up in a closet somewhere. It's not like you're not free to come and go as you want. It's not like that at all. You're free to leave whenever you want. So then why do you make it so weird? And why do you feel like you have to lie and deceive us and make up stuff to convince us that it's okay for you to leave? Well, because it's probably, I know why. Because it's not okay for you to leave. Because you're going to go out and hurt yourself. You're going to go out there and hurt somebody. You're not doing a good job of doing this with us. There's no way you're going to be able to do this on your own. Remember, that's why you're here. So people's timelines, they start changing their timeline. So here's a good example of what happened just in the last 72 hours. We knew this individual was leaving. But they were like really wishy-washy on the when. and they got involved. They manifested a familiar spirit. We had to deal with that, but so they start telling me how everything just magically lined up for them to leave. But they were trying to convince me that it all happened like that afternoon. When I know that's not true. It was in a course of 3 or 4 days. Except that, see, they didn't want us to know that or believe that. They were hiding. They were hiding all this information for like up to. So the conversation, the timeline. Let's just stick to the timeline. The timeline was not true. It was incorrect. It was impossible for all of that to have happened. When you can try to con a con, but you can't con a con. You can try and do all that stuff that you do as a human being. Deceit, lying, white lies, bending the truth, all that junk. You're only hurting yourself. You're not hurting us. You're not hurting me. My favorite thing about Christianity is that you don't have to do this thing. No one's making you do this thing. God's not even making you do this thing, let alone me. If you don't want to do this thing, don't do it. It's better for you if you don't do it than for you to say that you're doing it when you're not. That's called lukewarm, and he's going to vomit you out of his mouth. A breach in timeline usually means you're hiding something, you're being deceitful, you're not speaking the truth. Here's why that's important. Because if you're hiding something and you're being secretive and you're being deceitful and you're not speaking the truth, all of those lack truth. I am the truth. God is truth. He has no shadow of turning. He's not a man that he would lie. And if you listened to what we were talking about recently, we were talking about the father of lies. We were talking about Satan and how Jesus said he was a murderer and a liar from the beginning. And when he speaks, that's all he speaks. He speaks murderous lies, untruth, deceit. There is no deceit, shadow, untruth in God at all. It's impossible. See, darkness is the absence of light. When the light comes on, there's no more darkness. In the same way, it's impossible for there to be darkness in God because he's light. It's impossible. Did you know that in the future, there's no sun? What the illumination comes from God. There's no sun. It's God. My concern about people's timeline issues is because the root of it is deceit, lying, untruth, and that's my concern because Lucifer is the father of lies, and that the lake of fire was made for the devil and his angels and liars. See, it's very important to me that people understand that if you can't, lying is bad. Lying is really bad. Twisting the truth is really bad. Not speaking, you know what I'm saying? Manipulating the truth, manipulating what really happened, rewriting, people, how many times people rewrite their stories and their histories? It's weird. No, you can't do that. You have to tell the truth. This 2-minute warning is to warn you to make sure you keep your timeline intact, because you need to be speaking the truth. You can't be deceitful. You can't be lying. You can't do that. It's very dangerous. Because if you're doing that, there's a lot of other stuff that you're hiding. If you're manipulating your timeline when you're talking to me, you're trying to hide something from me. There's something you don't want me to know about you. And I guarantee you that you're doing the same thing with God. Because people come to me as a pastor because they see me as a spiritual leader or a spiritual figure. And if you're lying to an earthly spiritual leader or figure, you're lying to God as well. I'm not saying that you're lying to God because you're lying to me. No, I'm saying that if you have the tendency to lie to a human that represents a spiritual authority in your life, or you're coming to a person because they're a spiritual, you recognize them as a spiritual authority in your life, I guarantee you if you're lying to that person, me or whoever, your pastor I guarantee you're lying to God too. You're not being honest with yourself. You're not being honest with him. You're not being honest with others. Not being honest with others means you're not being honest with yourself, and not being honest with yourself means you're not being honest with God. That's just the way it is. I don't care how you spin it. That's why I tell people, you can't con a con. What are you gonna? You can't spin it on me. I'm from the music industry of Los Angeles. That's all about lying and spinning and deceit and con and Hollywood. And if you're doing that about anything, if you're just sitting around drinking drinking iced tea with a friend and you're spinning stuff, why? Why don't you just speak the truth? Well, it's probably because the truth isn't in them. And that's your 2-minute warning.
The views and opinions expressed during our broadcasts are solely those of the broadcast producers, hosts, and/or guests, etc., and are not necessarily the views or opinions of the Travelog Network, its sponsors, or affiliates.